Act 1. You don't pick up the phone. It is already in your hand before you even realize it. Sometimes it's not even an action, more like an automatic extension of you. Morning doesn't start with thoughts or decisions. It starts with a screen. Light turns on before you are fully awake. And the first seconds of the day already happen inside it. Swipe. Unlock. A chain you no longer notice. You are not looking for anything specific, but you keep searching anyway. Not information, not messages. More like a feeling of being inside something. Elevator, kitchen, street, subway. Places change, but the movement stays the same. Head slightly lowered, eyes fixed on the screen. People around you are doing the same. No agreement, no discussion, just identical behavior that became normal. And almost unnoticed, a pause appears, a silence between actions. Short but noticeable. In that pause, one thing becomes clear. Without the screen, there is just you. And that feeling is not always comfortable. With the phone, you are never completely alone. There is a stream, images, sound, movement, something that fills the space between thoughts. Without it, loneliness becomes more visible, not as an emotion, but as a simple state of nothing is happening, and then the phone stops being a habit. It becomes a way to avoid staying in that silence for more than a few seconds. It doesn't solve loneliness, it just makes it quieter. You don't open it for a reason. You open it to avoid staying in the moment where nothing distracts you from yourself. Act 2. You start doing it faster than you can think why. Just opening the screen, again and again. People are around you, but each of them seems to disappear into themselves, and the light in their hands replaces everything else. You stand among them, but it barely feels real. Because attention is already there, inside the screen. When you are alone, the space becomes too large. The room is not just empty, it becomes noticeable, and silence starts to feel louder than everything else. You don't choose the phone. You simply take it as the easiest way not to stay in that space, and then everything becomes repetition. Sitting, lying, watching, and time stops mattering. The screen doesn't just shine, it holds attention. Sometimes it feels almost safe, like there is a boundary of light around you. But beyond it, everything else remains. Anxiety, thoughts, emptiness. And the longer you look, the further everything outside the screen feels. At night, it becomes a habit, the last action before you disappear into sleep. And even when everything should stop, the screen keeps you in motion. Sometimes it feels like protection, as if the light of the phone separates you from the chaos around you. But that chaos doesn't disappear, it simply stays outside attention. Sometimes one notification is enough, and your hand moves before your thought does. And at some point it becomes clear, you are not looking at the phone. You are already inside it, even in a crowd, even in a city, even in motion. Everything narrows down to a single point of light. And even when you are simply sitting in silence, it feels like without it, silence becomes too large, and gradually, it stops looking like a choice, and starts looking like a state. Act 3. Sometimes it happens for a second. You're just holding your phone in your hand, and you don't understand why. Not because there is something new, but because your hand has already moved before you did. You're sitting in an empty room, and suddenly you notice something strange. The door is open. But you don't get up, as if an exit exists, but it is not connected to action. You reach for the phone, and that movement feels more familiar than the thought of not taking it. You are working or pretending to work. There is a notebook, a pen, a cup nearby. But attention is still there, in that small glowing rectangle, and it is no longer about interest. It is about automation, and at some point it becomes clear. This repeats even when you don't want it to, even when you are just sitting, even when nothing is happening. The phone stops being an object, it becomes a direction of attention, and the harder you try to stop, the more visible the emptiness around you becomes. Sometimes you see yourself from the outside, and you don't see a person using a phone, but a person who cannot stop returning to it. And everything that feels external, the city, the night, the windows, the space, becomes just a background for a single action. And even when you disconnect, there is still movement inside, as if you are sitting inside something that reacts faster than you do. And for the first time, a simple thought appears. This is no longer a choice. Act 4. You sit in the dark, and for the first time, nothing demands your attention, only the light from the window. You no longer look for something to fill the pause. You are simply inside it. The room is still empty, but emptiness no longer feels heavy. It simply exists. Outside, it is raining, and it does not feel like noise. It feels like a background that no longer interrupts anything. Thoughts do not disappear. They just stop demanding a reaction, and you are no longer trying to escape them, because there is nowhere left to escape to. You sit closer to the window, and for the first time the outside world does not feel separate. It simply is. The phone is still somewhere nearby, but it is no longer the center of gravity. You are not fighting it, and you are not holding on to it. It simply stops being the center. And even though the night is still there, something inside becomes quieter, not empty, just calm. And gradually a feeling appears that nothing needs to be fixed. Dawn does not come suddenly. It simply becomes noticeable, and you no longer look at the screen to avoid being in silence. Because silence is no longer frightening. It becomes a normal state, one where you can simply sit and exist